Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2025 RIC Engaged Scholarship Award. My name is Sandy Chan. I'm a Knowledge Mobilization Specialist at Research Impact Canada. We're very pleased that you can join us all here today. Before we begin, I'd like to start with the land acknowledgements. At Research Impact Canada is part of York University. We recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York. York acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon, One Pump Belt Covenant and agreement to peacefully share and care for the Great Lakes region. Now, for today's session, we will go briefly over the information about the RIC Award, hear from last year's winners about their experiences, and also open up the floor for the Q&A. If you have any questions as we're going through the presentation, please feel free to drop them in the chat so you don't forget, and we will answer them at the Q&A at the period at the end, or you can hold on to them and speak during the Q&A. So we'll just go over a very brief overview about why this RIC Engaged Scholarship Award was created. So the purpose of this award is to recognize graduate students who are making a societal impact through their research, regardless of their discipline or the sector they're in. And the award is also meant to shine a spotlight on co-produced research that actively engages with communities, industries, and organizations to address pressing issues of the day, whether that be social, economic, scientific, or cultural. And lastly, Engaged Scholarship reminds us that research and learning are most powerful and meaningful when they're collaborative, inclusive, and rooted in real-world relevance. So now we're just going to walk very briefly through the eligibility requirements and deadline. So to be eligible to apply for the RIC Award, applicants must be either a full-time or part-time graduate student affiliated with a Canadian institution that is part of the RIC network. If you're unsure whether or not your institution is part of the RIC network, the application website has a link showing all the eligible institutions. The applicant must also be enrolled at a minimum in their second year or higher. We also ask that your application package demonstrate that some knowledge mobilization activities have been implemented or executed to some degree, or are at least in the process of doing so. For the application package, the bulk of the evaluation will be on how your research project incorporates engaged scholarship principles and practices through a series of questions in the online portal. We will also review supplementary documents, such as a letter explaining why you're applying for this award, your goals, and the importance of the research and impact. We'll also require an academic or professional CV and 2 reference letters. One of them will be from the knowledge users or partner of your project, and the other will be from your academic or leading supervisor who's overseeing the project. And of course, please remember to take note of the deadline. The applications are due on Monday, February 24th, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time Zone. The portal will automatically close at that time. So your research project will be evaluated according to the following criteria. I won't be going through every single one of them, but you'll be able to see this on the application website in more detail. Each criterion is weighted differently, as you can tell. And in case you're looking for resources to help with knowledge mobilization for that aspect of your research project, our RIC website has a ton of them. The website is researchimpact.ca. In particular, some of the ones you may find helpful are the Intro to KMB 101, the Knowledge Mobilization Plan and Template, Storytelling for Impact, and Building and Navigating Partnerships. Now, on to the good part. I'm sure this is what most people are waiting for when they come here. So today you'll hear from individuals who have not only applied for, but also excelled in earning this award. They'll share their experiences, insights, and advice. Unfortunately, 2 of our winners from last year could not be with us today, but we very much appreciate our other 2 winners who were able to make it today. So without further ado, I will turn it over to them to introduce themselves, and we will get started on the questions. So I see Vanessa is here on the screen first, so I'll let her introduce herself first.
Hi everyone, nice to see you all. So my name is Vanessa and I'm a first-year PhD in occupational therapy student at McMaster University in the Department of Rehabilitation Sciences. And I actually won the award for my master's thesis work, which was completed of last year.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'll turn it over to Bincy.
Sure, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Binsi Baby. I graduated from University of Waterloo School of Pharmacy in last May 2024. So currently I'm working as a research coordinator in Patil Research Lab at University of Waterloo. So while I was doing my master's, my research kindly focused on improving medication adherence and medication management in adults using various technological solutions like medication adherence technologies. That was the research for which I got this award. That's about me.
Thank you. Thanks to both of you. All right, so for our panel discussion today, I thought we'll ask some questions to get examples of how knowledge mobilization activities are conducted in a research project, and also ask about the application process itself. If you have any questions for them as they're talking, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we will answer them afterwards at the Q&A or raise your hand at the Q&A session at the end. So we allocated a lot of time for the panelists to talk about their experiences, just because we know this is like the most important part of, like seeing how they did their project and like what they went through during the application process. So I'll start with the first question. So I guess I'll start with Ronessa first. So can you describe the partnership process with the community for your research project and how the research was made relevant to them?
Yeah, so my work looked at veterans with chronic pain, and it was actually funded by the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence for Canadian Veterans. And when you're working with veterans, it's really important to have a veteran partner because there are some subtle differences in the community that you wouldn't really be cognizant about if you weren't directly in contact with that community. So for example, I look at pain, and veterans might perceive pain differently than civilians because it's kind of a part of their job. So for example, if I would have went the traditional research route and had used a numeric pain rating scale, which is what a lot of pain studies use, that actually wouldn't have been very useful for my study because veterans don't really respond to that because they interpret their pain levels so differently. So I wouldn't have been able to understand this and other subtle differences if I hadn't had a veteran partner engaged in my work. So I had kind of started off by reaching out to a veteran partner so that I can learn a little bit more about what it was like, kind of what things that they thought were important to study. I also had her input in on what measures to use, also was involved in my qualitative data, helping me to identify any differences in kind of discourse and language that I wouldn't be as aware of as a civilian. So I think that community partnership piece was really important when I was planning the study, when I was analyzing it, and also I talked about how I used it when I was planning to disseminate my results, which is also very important because my veteran partner was engaged in developing knowledge materials and also helping to recruit participants and disseminate that information that we found to other veterans. That was kind of all over the place, so let me know if anyone needs any clarification.
Thank you, Ranessa. Bitsy, could you describe the partnership process with your research project and how the research is made relevant to them?
For sure. So as I mentioned before, the research I worked as part of my master's was related to medication adherence technologies, aiming to improve medication management and adherence among all adults. So as part of that project, I worked on 3 different stages, and the partnership in that 3 different stages were quite different. So for example, for the first project, which was a scoping review, through which we identified tools through which we can measure challenges among all adults. So during this stage, we established a partnership by working with 2 knowledge users. For example, like this knowledge users were individuals taking medications, and they were involved in various stages of the scoping review. To give an example, while I was selecting the tools and studies to be included in this scoping review, they contributed to the study by giving their perspectives and opinions about certain tools to be included. So moving on to the second stage of this, that project, it was the development of a classification system for medication adherence technology. So during this stage, after developing the classification system, we reached out to various people from different disciplines like knowledge users, physicians, pharmacists, and engineers to gain their feedback. And the third stage of that project was a study where we actually recruited 96 older adults with different problems like memory problems, vision problems, hearing problems, etc., to use different devices in our lab. So for that stage, we made a partnership with various community organizations. For example, in Kitchener-Waterloo area, the Kitchener-Waterloo the day program, Kitchener-Waterloo Day Program. That's a place where older adults usually come to engage in different kind of programs. So That was one of our partners. And apart from that, we had made partnership with different retirement homes across Ontario. And when it comes to other partnerships, I can think about it's like with industrial partners. We had some industrial partners where we actually got some of the devices to be tested in this study. And in addition to that, I can think about other partnerships are like for example, this study was funded by NRC and CHR. So we met regularly with them to update about the findings as well as to have discussions. So these are some of the partnerships for the study I worked on.
Thank you. So does anyone in the room here have any questions for Ronessa and Vinci regarding the partnership process of the research project? Feel free to raise your hand or just speak up on the mic or drop it in the chat if you have any questions, if you'd like further clarification. Okay, if there are none, we can move on to the next question. So Ronessa, how did you disseminate the results of your research beyond the academic setting? Can you share any strategies you use to communicate the significance of your work to a non-specialist audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we disseminated our work, well, we did obviously the traditional stuff like poster presentations, conferences, all that stuff. And then to communicate it beyond the academic setting, we worked with our veteran partner to create these. One was a pamphlet for healthcare professionals, and it was just kind of what our key information that our veteran partner and our research team felt was relevant to disseminate to healthcare professionals to help them deal with the issue in clinic. And then the other one was using, so we made these social media infographics, and it was just kind of breaking down the problem or the issue into different components, into pieces that we thought would be relevant for people with lived experiences. And we share that over social media. And I think we also share that with RIC. And we reached out to also past participants who participated in the qualitative part of the study, and we shared with them the social media package, and they shared it with their peers. So kind of using that word of mouth and snowballing, which is really important within the veteran community. We also reached out to a podcast host, which is a pretty big podcast in the veteran world, and we shared our results through them. Yeah, those are just some ways. We're thinking of more ways that we can kind of be a little bit more active, as a lot of this is kind of word of mouth within the veteran community, but yeah.
Those are some amazing knowledge mobilization activities you guys have, your project and like your team has done, Vanessa, working with the Chronic Pain Center. Amazing, like just because it's just so makes it so accessible to people outside, listening to a podcast, like a pamphlet for the healthcare providers. Just like it makes, yeah, simple language, accessibility. That's what we're looking for when, conveying that knowledge that's complex and jargony into like, something that people can easily understand. Vinci?
Thank you. I also think, sorry, if I could just add
Oh
one
yeah,
more
no, of
thing.
course.
When we were creating those materials, we were also trying to be very cognizant about how different communities might want different things. So, for example, when we were talking about healthcare professionals, they don't really care about the methods that we used in our study or any of that kind of stuff that I, as a researcher, thought was really interesting. But they were just kind of thinking about, how do I notice this in clinic and how can I help it clinically? Whereas we noticed that our veteran partners actually wanted a little bit more information than we would have thought. So it's really important to also kind of speak with your community members and kind of understand what the needs are for your community, because they might be interested in different parts of your research.
It's a very important point. Thank you for bringing that up. Vinci?
Yeah, sure. So for my research, the first two stages, that is scoping review and classification, the knowledge dissemination approach we used was like presenting the findings at Open Citizens Council. I think in Ontario, we had like some Open Citizen Council meetings, and we present the findings at this during their meetings to gain the opinions of the participants regarding our research as well as their feedbacks. And when it comes to the stage 3, for that stage, we used an approach where we actually incorporated knowledge dissemination and recruitment together. We prepared presentations to be given at different organizations, where we included things like some of the common medications people use and their side effects, and the storage of medications, as well as some of the technological solutions available for all adults in order to simplify their medications. So we went to these different organizations and gave these presentations, and we made the presentation in a way that it's kind of facilitated conversations. So during the presentations, we made conversations with the audience regarding the type of challenges they encounter. And after that, we introduced the technologies and invited people who might be interested in participating in the study to some of our devices. So this was kind of the approach we used for this study to disseminate our knowledge as well as for the recruitment.
Amazing, Vinci. That's a lot of like different input from different stakeholders who are involved in the project that will find use for that. And sorry, I heard someone say something. Feel free to raise your hand or speak up.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. I think. All right. I have a question. My name is
Yes.
Eric, and I want to know from them specifically on thesis like this. There are specific gaps you want to fill. There are clear objectives they want to achieve. Can they share with us some of these objectives so that also to also find out how is the application process in getting funding to support their work? Yeah, thank you.
Those are great questions, Eric. So I'll just kind of like walk the panelists through them. So the first question he asked was what were the objectives of your research project? Was that what you're asking, Eric?
Yes, please.
Yeah. And then I guess like how did you get the funding to then achieve those objectives? So I'll turn it over to Ronessa.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the objective of my study was to explore or describe the impacts of brain fog on quality of life in veterans with chronic pain. And I guess to get funding, it's kind of a tricky one. We basically just we had a topic that we were interested in. We saw that there was an open call for different scholarship applications through the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence for Canadian Veterans. So we submitted an application and kind of went from there.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think if you're thinking more broadly about like how to get just like funding in general, I think, just looking at if there's an organization that's kind of relevant to your research area and seeing if they have any open calls and applying to them directly.
Okay.
Vinci?
So for my project, one of the main objective is like finding the most suitable medication adherence device for all adults with different types of problems. For example, if someone has vision plus cognitive issues, what kind of technology would be the most suitable for them? So that was the main kind of objective for the study. So for this study, the funding, like this is kind of a 3 to 4 year project, which consisting of 4 different phases. So this funding was like when I joined the team, my supervisor already had funding for this project from NRC and CIHR. So apart from that, we also I also applied for some of the scholarships, which was also a source of funding for this project.
Thank you, and thank you, Eric, for that question. So another
I have
question.
another question for maybe Shan. Yeah, but maybe I wanted to know under RICS, if, for instance, I applied last year, 2024, early 2024, and had the option also for admission to Lakehead. So in that process, I was in, let's say, a co-RICS university in Africa, which was in Ghana, specifically, the Cape Coast University. So I had the option of, for 6 months, to have come to Lakehead and go back. But then the option of a PhD was also available. So I was advised to take the PhD rather. I'm here. I want to know, do I have to do the application again? Follow that process again?
So every year we launch this award, and if you applied last year, but like this, there's only 4 winners, right? So if the applicant didn't win the time that they applied last year, they can always apply again this year.
Okay. Okay. I think it was last 2 years. Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll follow up on this.
No problem. And then another question we'd like to ask our winners from last year would be, what are some of the impacts of your research that you've seen as a result of your research and incorporating the knowledge mobilization process into it?
Yeah, I can start. I feel like defining impact is always a little tricky, but one of the things we saw is that doing this research actually helped us to get a grant to kind of look at it on a bigger scale. We also had some more direct kind of impacts in where we were able to speak with participants who told us that the materials that we sent out and all of those kind of KT products actually helped them to be able to have discussions with their healthcare professionals and have the supports that they need. So it's a little bit harder to quantify that, but we did have some people kind of personally reach out to us and tell us that, which was really nice. We also, having that podcast, we also kind of count that as an impact because it really helped to generate discussion on social media, and we had some people reach out to us as well. So I guess, yeah, those are the kind of impacts we've seen so far.
That's great. Vinci?
So for my research, I think I can think about some of few impacts. So the one I would say, like as I mentioned before, this project was kind of a part of a large project. The main objective or the goal of the large project was to develop a decision aid. It's like a online tool. You can just go in and put, for example, an order can go in and put all your problems. For example, whether they have cognitive problems, vision problems, and etc. And at the end, this digital tool give you like a list of devices or like the features of devices that are more suitable for that person based on the problems they have. So using the data from the 96 participants we collected in the study, we developed this tool in our lab. So what we are trying to do is like try to incorporate this tool into clinical settings. So actually the clinicians can use this tool to recommend the most appropriate device for their patients based on their unique limitations or abilities they have. So by this way, like we are hoping to have improve the medication adherence as well as the self-management of medications among older adults, thereby like helping them to age their home or like maintain independence. So another impact I can think about is like after collecting the data from these studies, we actually shared with our industrial partners. So when they are trying to incorporate these findings when they develop new technologies, so that's kind of give us hope to that, like the new technologies which are coming in the future would have features that is more accommodate the unique abilities or the capabilities of different orders. And in addition to that, another impact I can think about is like due to our partnership with NRC and CHR, we are also sharing our findings with this organization. So maybe in the future, our findings can influence some of the researches which is related to aging in place.
Thank you, Vinci. And then the last question we'd like to ask you both is, what advice would you give to this year's applicants to improve their chances of success? So for example, what did you focus on to make your application stand out? Were there any challenges? And if so, how did you address them?
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, so I guess what I focused on was really trying to make kind of that community piece and why it was so important very clear. I also tried to use very concrete examples in my write-up just to kind of show how we were actually incorporating that to make it as clear as possible. So I think that's what I really tried to focus on as well. I also really took a step back and tried to kind of understand what the impact of my work had been. So thinking about impact can be a little bit trickier. So I just kind of took some steps to see, what conferences are, what kind of grants do we get, what are we looking for moving forward, and just trying to think about impacts in different ways so that we can incorporate that. So I think it's a lot of just kind of taking a step back and really breaking down exactly what you've done, because even some things that you might think are kind of normal and just a part of the research process maybe aren't that normal, or kind of like you might be underestimating or kind of overlooking some of the really important things that you do that can help strengthen the quality of your application. So I'd really just recommend taking a step back and looking at all of those things.
Thank you, Vanessa. I see Eric has raised his hand. Eric, did you want to speak?
Yeah, Vanessa, I wanted to find out if there are other areas you would recommend I suppose, from the research that you think that maybe after your research, there's other windows others can further continue to research on?
Yeah, that's a great question, Eric. So Renessa, sometimes as you know, as a researcher, when you're working on something and the results or the findings show something different, like were there other things that you thought of, like, oh, maybe we could have done it this way or done another way, that would show, that might have a bigger impact, or, that might have involved disseminating the results differently and so forth.
Oh, absolutely. I think that that kind of always happens. I think for our second study, which is a bit more quantitative, that definitely kind of happened, in which we thought, oh, we definitely could have done this a little bit differently. Unfortunately, by the time I kind of recognized that it was a little bit too late because I had to submit my thesis. But it was really helpful because now that I'm doing a PhD, I can kind of take a step back and take what we've learned from that to design a study that's a bit more rigorous and that can have a greater impact. So I don't really know how else to do that besides kind of trial and error and adjusting later.
Thank you. Bincy, can you share with us your experiences with the application process? What did you focus on to make it stand out?
Yeah, for sure. So I think like when I was drafting this application, the few of the areas I focused was, the first thing was like the impact of the research. Like I try to to talk about the real world impact. For example, since I worked with older adults, like I try to include actually include the findings which were I observed while I was doing the studies with the participants. So it's like about I try to like incorporate the factors like what kind of changes my research can make, or like how my research would help the people in the future. So apart from that, also it's about the knowledge mobilization activities. I think it's like if you, especially about like how what are the approaches you took like in order to mobilize your knowledge, especially among non-academic audience. And in addition to that, another part I focused was like clearly mentioning what kind of engaged partnerships I maintained during the research process. Like what about where did you had any partnership with community organization, industrial partners, or any other kind of partnerships that is related to your research? So these are the three main areas I think like I focused on while I was drafting this application.
Amazing. That's great advice. And did any of you experience any challenges throughout this process?
Yeah, I think it was hard to kind of think about what the impact of your work is, because even though that it's something really important that we should be doing as researchers, sometimes it can feel like it's like, oh, am I being too cocky? Am I being, I don't know, like boasting about myself too much, which can sometimes feel uncomfortable for some people. But I think it's also important to recognize kind of the value of your work and state that clearly. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge that I had.
Bincy?
So I cannot really think about any challenges, but I would say one thing was about getting the support letter. So I was kind of confused about like, okay, according to the application requirements, it says like someone knowledge users or like partner organization. So I was like not sure like from whom like I should be getting the supporting letter. So I think it's important to have a supporting letter from someone who actually be aware about your the impact of your research, or like actually participate in your research. Like means someone who can actually talk about your research. So that was kind of challenge for me. Then I had a discussion with my supervisor, and then we decided on the organization from which I got their support letter. So that was the one challenge I was. And another thing is like about time. So it's like important to give time, like when you're drafting the application or like getting the support letter from the organizations. Yeah, that was a challenge I can think about.
That's a
Thank
really
you.
good point, Vinci. I think that the reference letter was another challenge because my patient partner, or my veteran partner, she had never written a reference letter before, especially for something like a scholarship. So that was a bit of a new kind of process for both of us. So I think what we did is that I kind of I kind of told her, I was like, here, these are kind of the main important points that I think should be covered in this, and kind of like according to the guidelines that I read on the website. And then she went ahead and she did a draft based off what she thought. And then I kind of worked with her to um, kind of see if there was anything else that we could have added. And we kind of built it a little bit together, or I kind of helped to support her in that because she had never done it before. So that's a really good point, is that you might have to draft a letter for your patient partner and then have them revise it based off of that, which I think is common too, and even if you're doing like a CIHR.
Very great points, Vanessa and Vinci. I see Melanie has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to you both for sharing with us your experiences. It's really rich to hear. And like you said so well, Vanessa, when it's around impact, it's kind of tricky. Qual, quant, what counts, what especially my work is systemic change, so that it takes a while, and we're taking a snapshot, in time. Do you have any suggestions for readings or documents that you think could be helpful for us, or any of you advice on that for impact?
That's a really good question. Yeah, it is definitely hard to capture systemic change and talk about the impact of that, so I can appreciate that challenge. I don't know if I had any readings that I used. I just kind of broke down, like I looked at my CV and kind of thought, like, is there any publications that I got from that? Are there any grant opportunities, any conferences that I went to, or any places that I presented this, to kind of talk about that as impact? I also kind of talked about discussions we've actually had with people. So I don't know if you can maybe add, like, if there's an organization or something that you work with, if they can kind of speak a little bit about that, and then you can also demonstrate that impact in your reference letters. Or maybe there's like a model, like, is there like a KT model of systemic change that you can kind of reference to help support your impact? I don't know. But that might be a place to start looking.
Vinci, do you want to share something that you have, some readings or other materials, resources you've used to consult on making sure your research has impact?
So from my experience, I think like the place from which I got like more idea about the impact of my research was like when I had conversations with the potential participants or like older adults. So they were saying like, okay, this could help me in these ways. Like, so I think that was one of the ways I got like more idea about the impacts of this research.
Thank you. And so this is actually leading up to, opening the floor for Q&A. So I do see some questions in the chat, so I will read through them and just answer them for everyone in the audience. So one of the questions is from Catherine. She asked, are SHRC fellowship recipients eligible for this award? And the answer is yes, as long as you're a graduate student, even if you're postdoctoral, if you are, doing your master's or PhD, then you'll be eligible to apply for the award. And then I see another question here from Parisa. Are international students eligible to apply? The answer is yes, as long as you're enrolled in a RIC Canadian institution as a full or part-time student in your second year at least at a minimum, then you are eligible to apply even if you're an international student. And Isabella has a question here. So in order to apply, you need to partner with a community member. So part of the award recognizes co-produced research. So meaning that it's not just a researcher taking, being the end all and the start all of the project. It involves the perspectives and opinions and input and feedback of other stakeholders. Primarily the research project that you're, primarily like the research project that you're doing it for. So like the users or like the participants. I don't want to use the word participants, that's the wrong word, but essentially the award recognizes that the research is not just done for the sake of doing research and putting on the shelf. It's to have a meaningful impact in the community, producing results that will be of use to them. So mainly that would involve having a community partner in the process, advising, maybe at the beginning of the project on research questions or methodology, or advising on how best to disseminate the results or creating the products, and even how to maybe even how to evaluate as well. So that's why this RIC Engaged Scholarship Award stands out differently amongst the other awards that you may receive, that may evaluate, based on GPAs or like how many, publications have been published or like conferences people have been to, that kind of academic, I guess, like measurement. It's different from that. So that's why, yeah, our applicants who apply for this award have or are currently working with a community partner in the process. And then Eric asked, can I know the total funding cost to support students? So I'm not sure if you're referring to like the funding when they're doing the project, that's separate, but the award for winning the, I guess like the prize for winning the award, the RIC Engaged Scholarship Award, is that the master students receive $2,000 Canadian and the PhD students receive $3,000 Canadian. And I see that Jeanette has your hand up. Please speak up.
Hi, can you listen to me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So my question is more about the timing of the application. So I do have a project where I'm partnering with patient partners, physicians, and everyone. So, and then there is a quantitative part and an interview, and we are just rolling on the quantitative survey. So my question is more like, is it an appropriate time to apply in this time frame where I do not have the results in hand, or community engagement, which is the next step, or try for it the next year when I have more concrete results? Thank you.
That's actually a really great question, and that's a question we've gotten before as well. So I would say that it would depend on how far you think along your project has gone and how confident you are towards the end. I will say that the winners of in the past years for their award, they are quite far along in their projects, research projects, as like demonstrated by Vanessa and Bincy. You can see that they have worked substantially hard on their project. They are pretty much at the end, if not like at the end already. But that's not to say that if you're only halfway through, that there's no chance of winning. But you would have to, if you don't have the results yet, you would have to, say that, once these sort of like gauge like what the results may be, and that once you do have them, this is how you plan to conduct these knowledge mobilization activities, and like how the project will eventually end up. Like at the end, then we're going to conduct an evaluation, and then we're going to do like, interviews with the users to see the impacts and so forth. So that would like, just so to round it off, sort of so that so the review committee can kind of see like, oh, even though this person hasn't, completely finished the project yet, we can kind of see the end point, because they have a plan for the rest of the way. I hope that answered your question. And then Parisa, sorry.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
My research project is I have 2 cases and I conducted already the interview and collected the data, but there are 2 higher education networks providing services to forced migrants and refugees. So I just wanted to know for the reference letter, because they are two interrelated but separated networks. I just wanted to know for the reference letter, is it fine if I go through with one of the cases?
Yes, so the reference letter, if you have like multiple knowledge users or stakeholders involved in the project, it's fine if the reference letter only focuses on one of them instead of like all of them.
Thank you.
No problem. And Eric, I see your hand is back up. I'm not sure if it was not lowered from before, that's why. Okay, so I guess
Maybe it was not lowered. My apologies, please.
Oh, okay. Did you have a question, or just it wasn't just lowered from before?
Yeah, I think I should have lowered it. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Melanie?
Yes, thanks. I'm wondering how much context, history to provide. So my project is a continuation. So it started off as my honors thesis, went into my knowledge mobilization practicum, and it's now in its 4th phase in my master's thesis. So should I give background, or should I focus on just a little bit? So, I mean, it's hard because it's grassroots, so I can't completely eliminate the rest, but will I be evaluated just on the master's piece, or should I, similar to what you were saying, Vanessa, I think you're in a group that has broader objectives, and you're working on your your project, so maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
If that's, I don't know if that's clear for the question, sorry.
Yes. I was going to say, Vanessa, please speak.
oh yeah, good. Yeah, I think that's a really great question. So I'd started this project actually in my undergrad, but at that point it was kind of just a literature review. But I did speak to that in my application just to kind of set the stage of, hey, this is something that, I've been working on. It's kind of grounded in research and all that kind of stuff. And then kind of like, this is where it's at now. And then I also spoke to where we thought it would be going into my PhD. So I thought that that was helpful to kind of lay the stage of explaining it, but also kind of showing that it is something that's not just, just a master's thesis that I've just going to do for the 2 years and then kind of chuck away, but really kind of show that progression and also its evolution and where it's going. So I think that in my perspective, I think that that would be an asset, but of course, Sandy, you'd be able to better speak to that.
No, 100%. I agree with Vanessa. From the past project winners that we've seen, a lot of the winners have actually started their research project, as like both of you mentioned, not just like during the master's or like at the start of PhD. They've actually been doing this for a while. So whether that's in their undergrad when they worked on like an honors thesis, or they were already doing as a research assistant over a project that they're contributing to when they actually enter graduate studies, we find that these winners of the award tend to have already had that background work going for them before they even applied. And so when they applied, they had a more fully fleshed out and understanding, a huge overview of what they really want to achieve with their research project and how to make it come together. And so for your particular case, Melanie, I would definitely mention, some of the prior experience that you had, but I wouldn't focus too much on the prior experience, just because what matters would be what you're currently doing right now. And I'll bring you back to the criteria here, that if you're looking to see like which particular aspect of your current experience right now to focus on, this would be a great start to seeing like how your research project would be evaluated based on the different percentages weighted. So the more you answer the questions here on the screen related to your research project, falling into those categories, the better the review committee will have an understanding of your research project. So while it is important to have background information of your previous years working on this particular topic, it would be more relevant to focus on the project today, and also like the relevance, importance, how the knowledge mobilization activities were conducted or will be conducted, other engaged scholarship principles that were used, like potential impact and income and outcomes and so forth, and lessons learned and so forth. Yeah, but yeah, I do agree with both of you. Our past winners have actually been working on their topic for a while. It's not something they just started when they entered graduate school. It's something they've started and have been thinking about for a while. I also see another question here from Megan in the chat. It was sent directly to me, so I don't think it will show up for others. She asked, should the application letter include references? Asking because that can take up a lot of space in the page limit. So I've had this question asked before. I think the question for references is referring to academic references, just because we've had this question asked before. Sometimes in the application letter, when applicants are talking about, why they want to apply for this award and like the importance of it, they have citations that they want to put in. So yes, you can include them in the letter, application letter. The application letter is only 2 pages, so your references or citations will need to be on the 3rd page, and that won't count against you. But just make sure the part where you're writing about your goals, the importance of the project, and why you're applying for this award is only 2 pages. Citations can be on the 3rd page. And then in terms of just like references, like your supervisor and the knowledge users, that's different in the application portal. That would be in the application portal. You would have to put in their name and email. They'll be sent a link directly to their emails where they can upload a reference letter for you. And then I think there was another question. Okay, so Rosemary had another question here. Is the scholarship applicable to studies conducted outside of Canada? So yeah, I think it could be yeah, conducted outside of Canada. Yes, I'm just trying to think here because I think we had projects that were submitted in the past that were not, like the research topic was not necessarily based in Canada because some of their applicants were like in international development or studying international affairs. So that's why the project wouldn't necessarily be in Canada. So yes, the answer is yes. Your scholarship can be of your studies can be conducted outside of Canada, but you yourself as an applicant must be affiliated with a RIC Canadian institution according to that's part of the RIC network according to the eligible list that's found on our application website. So as long as your institution is part of the RIC network, that's fine. Your studies can be conducted anywhere. Okay, so I see Eric here has a question. Submitted an application which was to the Cape Coast in Ghana, successfully approved. Okay, apply for the PhD at Lakehead. Yeah, I would say start a new application, Eric, for this year. Just because every year when we launch the award, we start fresh. We don't have the last year's like applications to look at anymore. I would treat this as a clean new slate and just like start fresh when you apply for this year. And Tara has two questions here. One by saying at least the second year, do you mean master students cannot apply in the first year? If you would walk me through the timelines and deadlines, that'd be awesome. And can we get the recorded link of today's session? So yes, I'll answer the second question first. Everyone can get the recorded link of today's session that will be sent out. If you're registered for the session for today, that will automatically be included in the follow-up email. And then by saying second year, does that mean master students cannot apply in the first year? So this was a little bit tricky for us this year when our review committee had like a meeting to sort of just like reevaluate the guidelines. We found that graduate students who are in their first year tend to focus more on the coursework because you're just starting out. So that's why we request. And so when you're in your first year, usually most of the applicants would just be trying to get through like 6 or 7 subjects that they're taking. They haven't really thought about what they want to do in terms of the research project. Usually that comes in the later part of the stage, and considering the award is launched in November, and they have until February to submit their application have until February to submit their application package. If you're in the first year, you start your program in September. That doesn't really give enough time, we find, for first year students to really put together a plan. And that's the only reason why. It's not to disqualify anyone. But usually by, after that, the projects are submitted. It's significantly much more interesting, just because they've had more time to work on it, to do the literature, not just the literature review, but also start thinking about how, like, which community partner they want to like partner with for the project, and what kind of products that can come out of this, what they plan to do with the results afterwards. So usually that comes in the later part. And I see here Maitland has his or her hand up. Please feel free to speak.
Hi, yeah, it's Maitland, and
Oh,
thank
sorry,
you.
Maitland. Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you for this awesome presentation today. I just had a quick question about the CV. I'm sure many of our CVs are much, much, much longer than 3 pages. So I kind of wanted to know what you're looking for in that CV in particular. I assume it might be those elements and items that emphasize your community engaged work, but I just wanted to confirm, like, what you're looking for in those 3 pages.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we're evaluating the applications, the CV does help because we do see the trajectory of where the applicant is going. So I would say, even thinking about Melanie's question about how she said that, she's currently a PhD candidate, but she's done all this work prior and how much of it to mention it. I wouldn't necessarily say mention that in the application letter, but where I would mention it is in the CV. So if you had a very relevant experience, whether that's work or academic or an internship or research assistantship, even volunteer experience, things like that, that will, help the review committee members get a bigger picture understanding of why you're doing this particular research project on this topic and why you will be a strong candidate. Maybe you've already done like conference presentations on this topic. You already have work experience with the actual knowledge users by interacting with them, working alongside them. helping them and so forth, like that would really help make your application stronger. So yeah, it's essentially what you said, focusing on the things that would make you stand out as a candidate applying for this particular award. Other knowledge mobilization activities you may have done, whether, holding like stakeholder meetings or like running workshops, helping an organization develop their products and services, using the particular knowledge that you have, that you're studying, that would really help showcase and give a better picture and a better understanding of who you are as a candidate applying for this award to the committee.
Okay,
And I
perfect.
also,
Oh, sorry.
No.
Can I just ask a really quick follow-up as well?
Yeah.
If you are on a project that has I've been on this project for almost 10 years, and yeah, I started as an undergrad, then did it as a master's, and now I'm a PhD student. I wonder, the community partnership is somewhat recent. It's a little over a year now. But I wonder, in the application process, would it be worth emphasizing, I guess this comes back around to your point about the CV. It sounds like from what you're saying that including the stuff that's unrelated to the project is still worth including on the CV. I guess that's the question.
Yeah, so I would say most of the applicants who end up going applying for this award and end up going to their graduate study program for a reason, and that's because of their prior, like interest or knowledge or experience working in the field, and that's why they, end up doing graduate program because they want to learn more about it. But I would say, like, in terms of like not as relevant stuff, but that would still be applicable in terms of you as a candidate for the award, would be things like, if you necessarily didn't study in the undergrad that you're currently in the major that you're currently studying in the graduate program, for instance, like it would still be relevant to showcase that you have, strong research skills or like strong, work experience.
Oh,
in this,
sorry.
like,
I
yeah.
think there was a misunderstanding there. What I
Yeah.
was saying is that the project I will be applying with, I've been a part of in a serious way for about 10 years.
Okay.
I've just been at the same institution during that time. So it's not like it's a different degree or anything. My question is more that the project doesn't really have a natural like start and stop date, in the sense that it began with my PhD. It began when I was an undergrad. And I've been presenting at conferences and publishing about it for 10 years now. So my question is more, this is a community engaged focused research. So that part of the project does kind of have a start date. That part of the project started back in January 2023. And so my question is more, all of the other academic work I've done on this project, is that still worth emphasizing in my application? Okay, I see. Okay. Sorry that I didn't explain that clearly.
Oh, no, that was me. That was on me.
Okay, no, that's really helpful.
That's a really good question. Can I also add just like one tip I've heard from other people about this? Yeah, just thinking about like when you're building your application, like trying to have kind of a common thread and a common story that you're kind of sharing all throughout. So for example, the Engaged Scholarship is a really big piece that you want to make sure is all throughout your application. So of course there will be some places where you only have like so many words or whatever. So there are some places where you can't mention everything. So you can make sure those are included somewhere else, whether that be in your CV or if you can, ask one of your references to mention it if it's relevant to something you've done with them. So just kind of having those common threads, but also treating the different pieces as an opportunity to share something slightly new is an advice I've had from other people.
That's really helpful, Renessa. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to add on to Renessa's point, which is beautifully explained already. So that's why we asked for the supplementary documents in addition to the bulk of the evaluation being the research project, according to the criteria on the screen. Like this criteria is going to evaluate your research project. We asked for the supplementary documents as well because it does create that fuller picture where we learn more about the candidate's background, their experiences, their expertise, and the reference letters as well that they provide from other, whether it's the knowledge users or their supervisor, also helps round that out to better understand them and their project much better. So as Renessa said, you can't explain everything in the one research project that's being submitted. So these are the other pieces that will help explain the other aspects.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you, Sandy.
No problem. And I see here, I know we're running low on time, but we're actually almost done anyway. I'll take one more question here from Parisa. And her question is, the form for the reference directly will be sent to the referees or it should provide in the format of a letter. So basically in the online portal, once you enter your reference name and email, they'll get a link and they will be able to write their own letter to upload into the link that's provided to them. So the format of the letter, it's just the standard, 1-inch margins. It can be double space or single space, 12-point font times New Roman times Roman font. So just like very standard, and it'll be sent directly to them. So they'll get the link. You won't be getting the reference letters from them. So they don't give you the reference letters and you upload them. They get the link and then they will upload their reference letters for you confidentially, privately on their end through their own email. Anything, last call for one more question? All right, seeing there are none. Thank you, Vanessa and Vinci, for joining us today and sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it a lot. And that concludes our information session. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me at stychan@yorku.ca. We also encourage you to check out our RIC website to find more resources on knowledge mobilization there. I wish you all the best of luck with your applications. Good luck, everyone. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.